What happens when everything points to Lyme disease except the lab tests? One of the many awful parts of this disease. It's a question many doctors and patients face. I went 4 years after my bite before someone finally tested me for Lyme disease, and I even tested negative. Thank goodness I'm stubborn and I didn't trust the doctor or the result. I retested 6 weeks later and then I was CDC positive. Even if the patient has potentially been exposed to ticks and demonstrates symptoms that could be Lyme disease, many doctors will still incorrectly rely on laboratory tests to make a diagnosis. It's important to know that, according to the specialists who treat Lyme and even the CDC, testing of Lyme disease is supposed to be for confirmation of a diagnosis already made, not to actually make the diagnosis. Blindly accepting a negative result can have serious, even deadly consequences for patients who have Lyme. Not starting treatment because of a negative lab result is what happens every day, sadly. This is such a huge problem, especially in states with high numbers of Lyme infections, such as Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, have actually passed laws requiring any practitioner who tests for Lyme to tell the patient a negative result does not mean they don't have Lyme. So why would an infected patient still test negative? There are a number of reasons that could trigger a false negative test result, and I'm going to do my best to keep this simple. So here we go. Why your Lyme disease test results may be negative despite persistent symptoms. 1, the test isn't designed to detect the exact disease causing bacteria that you have. A number of Lyme disease lab tests are designed to identify only a few species of Borrelia that can cause Lyme. In the United States, for example, many tests are only designed to detect Borrelia burgdorferi, leaving out many other species that are less common yet still known to cause disease in humans. For pronunciation purposes, we're going to call this BB. A recent internal study showed exactly how easily tests can miss infections from species other than BB. IGeneX researchers tested 43 samples, all positive. Okay, now using the more limited Western blot, only 14 of those 43 Lyme immunoblot positive samples were Western blot positive. In other words, the Western blot missed 29 of the 43 infections. However, when all 8 Western blots were performed, the remaining 29 samples were detected. This inability of many lab tests to cast a wide enough net for detection could result in false negatives for patients infected with different strains of Borrelia. Okay. Number 2, your test wasn't sensitive enough. Many doctors and labs adhere diligently to the 2-step test. For Lyme disease that are approved, and this is approved by the FDA and recommended by the CDC. Now, both tests are designed to detect antibodies in the patient's blood to the bacteria, and according to the CDC, both must be positive for a patient to be diagnosed with Lyme disease. However, recent studies have raised concerns about the accuracy of these tests, particularly the ELISA, which has been found to have a poor sensitivity rate or ability to detect the antibodies in the blood. Now, recent studies in fact report that the ELISA and Western blot can miss up to 60% of well-defined Lyme disease cases. Number 3, indirect testing can be more limited than direct testing. Both tests used by the CDC recommended 2-tier process are indirect methods of diagnosis, meaning they do not detect the actual Lyme bacteria itself, but instead it measures the body's immune system response to the presence of disease-causing bacteria. However, a number of factors can prevent the body from producing antibodies, including the following. Timing, for instance. A patient's body may not have developed a sufficient enough number of antibodies to detect it. This issue can be compounded by the lack of sensitivity of the test itself. Another one is immunity suppression. The saliva of an infected tick contains specific immune suppressing components that can delay or prevent the activation of the person's immune response. This allows Lyme disease causing bacteria to take hold. Antibiotics. If a patient is taking antibiotics at the time of the Lyme disease test, they may not produce enough antibodies to be detected. Then there is modified form of Borrelia. In some patients, the Borrelia bacteria will transform into a cyst form, which will prevent the body's immune system from producing the antibodies. A weakened immune system can also produce false negatives. It's compromised because they might have co-infections that's making the illness worse. And seronegative patients, these patients do not even produce antibodies at all. So direct testing methods can eliminate some of these variables because they don't rely on the body's response to a pathogen, but it rather looks for the presence of the disease-causing bacteria itself. PCR assays, for example, are used to identify Lyme bacteria in the patient's blood or urine. Different labs can produce different results. When it comes to testing for Lyme disease, the quality of the lab conducting the test can also affect the reliability of the result. Different labs use different techniques and protocols to perform each test. Those with more advanced procedures and capabilities provide higher levels of accuracy and precision across various types of tests. I have tested in the same week with 2 separate labs. One says I have Lyme disease, one says I don't have Lyme disease. That sucks. This directly affects how many cases are documented in statistics. There are way more cases of Lyme that's documented, trust me. My own case wasn't even documented because I got bit outside of their criteria, and I'm CDC positive for Lyme. Well, when you're diagnosed 4 years late, because I wasn't diagnosed in time, my case doesn't count. Go figure that out. So, co-infections cause complexities. In some cases, they may not have Lyme disease at all, but one of these other illnesses instead. Depending on a patient's symptoms, doctors should consider the potential of a co-infection as a factor when all symptoms point to Lyme disease, but the test results are negative. Lyme rarely travels alone. I haven't met one person in all of these years that only has Lyme. Tick-borne relapsing fever can also cause a negative result. So an early and accurate diagnosis is key. For patients and doctors, being aware of the many factors that can influence Lyme disease lab tests can better help you move forward. Doctors should consider multiple types of tests, a panel approach, to increase the chances of detecting the disease. Finally, doctors should also consider the risk factors that heighten someone's probability of exposure to ticks, or regions where Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases are prevalent. It is also found in every state. Trust, it's everywhere. If someone tells you otherwise, they are wrong. Period. End of discussion. Okay, that frustrates me. Okay, I hope this helps you understand a little bit about why testing is so hard. Please like, subscribe, and share this video so more people understand why Lyme testing is not always reliable.